What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallard, joined by my co-host,
Ricky DaCosta.
Tell the folks what time it is.
Run it back.
Time to run it back, folks. Episode 19. You already know what I'm going to say. Please don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. We want those 5-star reviews. Growing at a very nice pace, but we can always grow faster. And we can't do that without you guys. So we appreciate all the love and the feedback. We're going to get into some of that tonight because we obviously had some very controversial things happen over the weekend. A few different calls.
But listen, let me jump in. I just want to say
Go right
Happy
ahead.
New Year.
Oh, very
right?
good,
Listen,
very good.
first of all, we're very thankful, grateful. Lots of blessings in 2023. This podcast got started. All the love that you guys have been giving us. You know, me and this guy sat at a bar, and all of a sudden, here we are talking to you. We got Shawnee in production. So we're very, very grateful for all of you guys. Hopefully, health, wealth, happiness for all of you out there. So many, many blessings. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you all, guys. And I just hope that whatever your New Year's resolution is, it's something that you guys can stick with and you get after it, man. But go get after 2024, man. Have some fun.
Definitely.
So listen, before we get into the pros or anything, gotta talk CFP, that college football playoff. 2 fantastic games. I sat there, I watched them from quarter to quarter. We'll start in the order that they happened. Michigan versus Bama. Give me your take on the game.
Listen, great game.
Yeah.
Great game.
It
was. Listen, it was.
Two storied programs.
It was sloppy, though, right? Let's start off by saying that I think
Michigan had me worried multiple points in that game.
100%. But I just want to start off with that. It was sloppy, but overall, just great, exciting game.
Yeah.
Went to
It's
overtime.
nothing like the Rose Bowl.
Right? Rose Bowl, you know.
Just magic, man.
Absolutely.
It's a
right?
magical atmosphere.
So now you start off, I expect the teams to start off a little bit slow, right? Coming off of a long break.
Sure. And Michigan kind of has that thing working for them, too,
listen,
as well,
so Michigan,
or against them.
right? It might be the team of destiny, right? Is it their last dance, right? Or is Harbaugh going to the
gonna
NFL?
leave? Yeah.
He just
Ride off into
hired
the sunset.
Dan Yee as his agent. So there's a lot going
Saw
on.
that.
If you notice, all right, Harbaugh didn't answer any questions, right? He barely talked to the reporters at the end of the game and things like that. So, but to the actual game, Nick Saban, I have no idea what he was doing. Defense didn't have it together. Offensively, they made no changes, no adjustments. Michigan blitzed their Sam linebacker on every first down.
5 sacks in the first half.
5 sacks in the first half. Yeah. They're blitzing. They're getting after you. Literally, Alabama did nothing to adjust to, force them to calm down the blitz. Alabama could have went with max protection, throw the ball deep, roll the pocket, right? Get the QB out of there. But they did none of that, right? So there was a failure of coaching here. Now, listen, like I'm never going to say anything terrible about Nick Saban, but Nick Saban has been at his best when he's had an elite offensive coordinator. He doesn't have that right now.
Okay.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, he actually went after last year the Washington offensive coordinator.
I think you're right.
To really bolster.
Bieniemy?
Yeah. No, not Bieniemy. Washington.
From last year.
Washington College. Right.
I gotcha.
Huskies.
Okay.
I think his name is Chubbard or something like that.
Okay.
The offensive
That's
coordinator.
DeBoer's boy, though. They've been together for a long time.
They begged him to stay.
Yeah.
He stayed. He said he had unfinished business. Now they're in the national championship game.
Sure.
But Nick Saban is at his best when he has an elite offensive coordinator. He doesn't. You could see it in that game. No adjustments were made. Just look at the very last play, right? First of all, Michigan called the timeout. Bama called the timeout, and then you ended up with a quarterback run. I thought what was going to happen was it was the quarterback run, but the tight end, the jump pass with the pop play, the old Tim Tebow play, right? Or, again, line up.
I think they ran that against Ohio State when the SEC finally broke through and won the championship.
Right.
And then everyone realized,
it would have been perfect. I think
the
Penn
best
State
conference
ran
in ball.
something like that too, right? So a couple years back. But my thing is, Michigan, they were blitzing on the edges, man-to-man, on the right side, one-on-one coverage. On the left side, you had a slot guy and you had another wide receiver. On that side, they could have easily did a pick play, right? Slant in, right, with the out route, and it would have been wide open.
Yeah.
On the one receiver side, they could also run a slant and there's no one covering the middle of the field. So the fact that no adjustments were made, no creativity, where's the run pass option? I guess you could technically say that play might have been, they could have thrown it to the running back,
Sure.
right? But Michigan knew what was coming. They didn't have time. Where I give Michigan credit, their defensive tackle, their nose guard, kept on slanting.
It's Mason something, I
right?
believe. Yeah. 55.
55,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yep.
Hell of a kid.
Yeah,
he
he's
was
tough.
slanting over the center's face.
He's a highly ranked
right?
draft prospect as well.
Definitely made the center uncomfortable. I think the center had like 5 or 6 bad snaps. It happened on that
Yeah, there were some
play.
low snaps. Yeah.
So
my friend was texting me that throughout the game.
That piece of it I don't love, right? Like, look, great game. Love the outcome. I thought Bama could have won that game. Go Michigan. But it was surprising to see Nick Saban get out coached by Jim Harbaugh. He's a hell of a coach, but not many times in my lifetime have I seen Nick Saban get out coached.
So I'll somewhat pivot and disagree with you slightly. I felt that game came a little bit less down to coaching, and I thought it was more. I thought that game embodied what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. That's what that game really looked like to me. And I felt like both teams early on, you could tell Michigan had a very specific game plan. We're not going to let Jalen Milroe beat us with his legs.
Not at all.
They were after him. They were coming after it with pressure. And to Bama's credit, they were able to get McClellan somewhat involved, their other running back. They were able to run the ball a little bit. But Milroe, they were stopping him early. The only reason I'm saying that I somewhat disagree with you is because watching Bama throughout this year, I think that Saban has probably done one of the coaching jobs of his life, because this is the first time watching, and I can remember in how long, that Bama stepped on the field and I watched them line up against another team, and I did not think that they were the more talented team. I thought Michigan was the more talented team yesterday. I thought Bama kept it close. They battled. They did what they had to. Michigan had a few self-inflicted errors that kind of made you worry early in that game. But if you go throughout Bama's season, they very easily could not have been here. Like, they could have been a 4-loss team. I felt like relative to Saban's time in Bama, this is one of the least overall talented teams that he's coached. They're Alabama. They're still obviously great, but relative to their depth of talent that they had in the years past, you know what I'm saying? I didn't feel like they were quite that level of team. And that's the first time, and I can't even remember how long, that I've actually seen not just an SEC team, but a Big Ten team be able to line up across from Bama and win the battle in the trenches at the line of scrimmage, even without their best starting offensive lineman too, as well, the guy who had just gotten hurt in the Ohio State game.
Yeah.
Seeing them be able to move the ball, and especially late, Blake Corum coming down to the wire, getting stronger as that game went, and breaking that beautiful touchdown run that he had late. I think you had the case of, now listen, maybe some pivots, adjustments late in the game, a couple of play calls here and there. But honestly, I thought it looked like two teams that were very well prepared to play each other, and it kind of just came down to who was the better team in the end. And it just seemed like Michigan kind of outlasted them.
And listen, I don't disagree with you, right? And the level that I'm talking for is the elite of the elite,
I
right?
gotcha.
Like Nick
Yeah.
Saban,
and those
one of
couple
the best
of play calls
of
here and there,
all
those
time.
situational,
And
sure.
Nick Saban is not a coach that is not good at adjustments, right?
100%.
So I was more so
Look at how they came
shocked.
out in that third quarter, too.
Exactly.
It looked like they
right?
had something figured out,
If
too.
they made that adjustment in the second quarter, right, it would have been a different game.
Sure.
And the fact that they reverted back the fourth quarter,
Yeah,
right? I'm
I get
more
what
so
you're saying.
talking about some of the offensive plays.
Yeah.
Where I will give Michigan credit, because I'm not taking any credit away from
I gotcha.
Michigan.
No, I gotcha.
If you look closely, Michigan was running a scheme very similar to the 49ers, right? And the Miami Dolphins, right? They shifted, they motioned, they moved the back, they went the other way. So their like offensive game plan, their offensive scheme was amazing.
Sure.
Bama was confused.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what I mean, right? The Jim Harbaugh's offensive scheme was so good, right, that Saban really couldn't adjust with his guys. Yes, if they played 10 times, he would have been able to make a difference. But throughout 4 quarters, to see Nick Saban not be able to figure out what another team is doing, that is surprising.
Yeah.
And to see Jim Harbaugh elevate, right?
Finally get over the hump. Yep.
Get
it was
over
huge
the hump,
for him.
that elite level,
Yep.
right? It looked like he learned from his prior losses and mistakes, right, in the college football playoffs, and it showed up, and that's why they won.
Yeah, no, listen, I hear you. It was It was a great game. The finish was fantastic too as well. And to go back just really quick, watching them shut down Milrow in the beginning of the game, but then watching Milrow, they started calling design runs. They started getting a lead blocker. They basically used the back as an extra trap puller to set Milrow up. You could see they got that run game going a little bit more, but I think it just goes back to Milrow was benched at one time this year too. So he really worked himself back into getting into the good graces of the coaching staff. But I think the one thing that game did show is Milrow's still got to develop as a thrower. You know, it's funny. Eerily similar to Jalen Hurts when he was there too as well. Great runner, but had to develop as a thrower.
But he
I
can
like
throw the ball. Let me say this: he can't throw the ball
out.
deep though. He
can
can't throw the ball deep, right?
Absolutely.
You know, his intermediate throws, right?
He's got to work on the complete level of the passing game. But listen. We had another treat as well, too, because right after that game ended, and then bang, you went right into the coin toss announcing.
And they're slinging the rock.
For Texas and Washington. Listen, I don't know what people are saying about quarterbacks in the draft, but man, if these teams are not doing their work on Michael Penix, they need to, because that guy is going to be a player at the next level. I know a lot of people are scared because early on, at University of Indiana, I think he tore 2 ACLs, so he had big-time injuries.
2 in the same knee and 1 in the other, if I'm not mistaken. So he had three injuries.
And that's crazy.
Some combination of 2 ACLs and a meniscus or something like that, and I think a shoulder.
Yes, and I think people have also talked about the fact that they'd like to see him run and be a little bit more mobile because that's kind of what the league calls for today. What I like about him is he doesn't run unless he necessarily has to. And in that game, a couple of times, he just took what the defense was giving to him. And it's funny. You don't see him run a lot. But then when he does, you're like, this dude's quick, man. He is fast, he's quick. He got up 9 yards pretty quickly from that line of scrimmage. But I have to tell you, I've watched a lot of different quarterbacks in the college realm this year. Bo Nix to me throws the prettiest football in the game right now. Fantastic game. Listen, I'm a Longhorns fan, so it was a little bit disappointing, but I also like being right on my picks. I did say it was going to be Michigan-Washington in the championship, and I think the thing I like about that is twofold. 2 new teams, right? So it's new blood, and we're going to get an undefeated team at the end of this season. That is nice. So I think that's pretty cool. But give me your thoughts on the Texas-Washington game overall.
Listen, I think
there's some studs in that game too, man.
I think clear-cut, I think Washington was the better team.
Yeah.
Right? Texas looked a little unprepared, right?
I agree.
They really didn't move the ball well in the first half. Looked like the moment was a little bit too big for some of the players, right?
Coaching. I think coaching was a big factor in that matchup. Not that I'm putting Sark down.
I think to the point that you're probably making, I think Washington, they've been in so many close games. The moment wasn't too big for Washington.
Battle tested.
Versus Texas. Not that they weren't prepared. I just think at the end of the day, they're college kids, right?
Yeah.
There's nerves, right? You win this, you're going to the Natty.
Sure.
Right? So you feel the pressure. Everyone's family's there, right? You know, friends, everyone's watching, right? You're getting all these text messages. So all these additional distractions and pressures and multiple, press conferences and stuff like that. It just seems
and it's such a long wait, too.
Right? 100%. So everybody, hey, don't let us down, right? You know, take us to the Natty. It seemed like Texas felt that pressure from all the external forces versus Washington. Hey, we've been here. We've done it before. It's going to be a close game. We expect to be in the national championship game. And that's how
we got a big-time quarterback with big-time playmakers. And we got what might be the best coach. One of the, if not the best, he's got to be in top 3 to 5 conversation of college coaches in college football right now, in Kalen DeBoer. That guy just knows how to prep. And he's won at every place and level that he's ever coached at.
Really has.
Looking at that game, too, to your point, I would say when I was watching that game, I thought Texas, you could see like within the first quarter, it seemed like Texas was a team that kind of just came out and expected to just win off like their talent and bravado, and we're the Texas Longhorns and they're little old Washington. They're going to be too nervous.
No, absolutely. Now, listen,
Washington came out and executed a game plan.
Like, that Texas defensive line, there's some big boys on that line, right?
Yeah.
Like,
no joke.
If you look deep, there was some fighting going on.
Oh, yeah, there was.
You know, so I get.
But credit to Penix and the Washington coaching staff and that game plan of somewhat neutralizing that defensive line.
So here's why I say they were a little nervous, right? Both running backs had turnovers and fumbles, right? Right. So that was an indication that they were nervous, especially as the moment got bigger where they were coming back, right? the kid Mitchell on Texas, the wide receiver.
Yep.
Like, he showed up at
They got
the
some
end.
dogs at receiver
I was
too,
wondering,
man.
where the hell was he the first 2-3 quarters?
Yep.
Right? Like, where was the game plan, being designed around him? Where I was a little disappointed in Texas, you're down 2 scores and you're still running the ball, right? It's very interesting to see when coaches in the NFL start their hurry-up offense, right? Because you're playing against the clock, right?
Yeah.
If the beginning of the fourth quarter, Texas is down 2 scores, and they're slowly running their scheme. And I get it; they're not rushing.
Sure.
They don't want to.
They want to stay within themselves.
They want to make sure they score, but again, you have to score with pace to give yourself enough time, right? So Texas, I think, had about 50 seconds left, right, to try to score.
Yep.
If they sped up that early drive in the fourth quarter, they may have had 1 minute and 50 seconds left, and that could have been
and then they were rushing
point.
in those last couple of. There were a couple of plays late in that game that didn't make much sense. To me.
I'll give you that. The
throw to the flat to the sideline.
Exactly.
Where they were in,
What was that about?
I didn't understand that at all.
Right?
And
if
they
anything,
wasted
you
like
could have thrown
almost
a
10
fade
seconds.
to Mitchell, right? Now, got to give that cornerback number 25 from Washington credit, right? Mitchell scored the touchdown, jumped early on him. The cornerback flipped it. He jumped early, knocked it down to do the fade. Again, here's elite coaching. I would have loved to see the post route, right?
Sure.
Like, fake the fade and hit the post.
Yeah.
He would have been wide open because the cornerback was all over the fade. He wasn't going to get beat again. Right? Elite coaching is you come inside. So instead of wasting that play to the running back, you isolate 1-on-1, 3 receivers to the left, Mitchell on the right.
I like it.
And then hit the post in the
I
middle.
know exactly what sequence you're talking about, too.
So that's like
could have
the
got
next
a little bit
level
more
coaching that could have given Texas the opportunity to win. But listen, hats off. Michael Penix, over 450 yards thrown, right? He's snubbed with the Heisman. So, they came prepared. They did the damn thing.
Yeah, and listen, if you go talent for talent, those two teams are pretty comparable. I think Texas might have had a slight edge on paper coming into the game at the line of scrimmage, especially.
Not experience.
Yeah, no, not experience.
Not experience.
Just pure talent, all right? But it just goes to show you, and I was reading, I'm a bit of a YouTube comment reader. I'll watch a video and then I'll read a bunch of the comments. And I don't know who said this, but I thought it was so aptly described. Washington is like a boxer.
Okay.
And they come out, and they jab you, they give these short little consistent plays, and then bang, Penix just drops one deep on you. And I say that to allude to, if you are a team in the NFL right now and you are looking for a receiver, I know all the talk, and we were talking about this during the break. Marvin Harrison Jr., I get it. Rome Odunze is that dude,
New York
man.
Giants.
My man is a problem.
New York Giants.
He is a problem.
New York Giants, don't get this wrong. You got the 5th pick.
You described him as basically a new 7-Eleven. So he could be like a 24-hour
he's
Wawa.
Chase.
Yeah.
He's Chase. Literally, some guys are built for the NFL. You can
Contested
tell
catches, route
he
running.
is
It's
built
just
for the NFL. Now, listen,
he's
I
a
get
dog.
it. There's some really talented receivers in this draft, right? Marvin Harrison Jr., no brainer.
Stud
easy
amongst
pick.
studs, yeah.
But Odunze?
I think he's right there.
Listen.
I think he's right there.
If the Giants don't get him, I just pray he doesn't end up in the NFC East. I don't want the Giants to face him 2 times.
Dude's going to be a problem.
Listen, he's going to be a problem.
That dude is going to be a problem.
He's really going to be a problem.
So before we kind of wrap up here and then move over to the NFL.
You want to make your college picks? You want to?
Let's make a pick right now in the national championship. We've got Michigan against Washington in the national championship. I believe it's next Monday night.
Yes, it is. Well, who do you have? Are you going with your boy Michael Penix Jr.?
Man,
right? Even though he just beat your Longhorns, right? Are you a little bitter?
Listen,
what
this
are you
is
doing?
tough because I like Penix so much, and I have watched a bunch of Washington games. I want to pick them, but I said this before when I made that pick. I think Michigan is a team of destiny. And I just think it is. And I thought if Michigan was going to lose, I think they were going to lose in that game. And if they can run the ball like that on Bama, especially late in that game, get stronger, I think Washington is going to have a heck of a fight on their hands. And I think it's going to be a good game. I think it'll be back and forth because Washington can score. Yeah. But I think Michigan's defense and their run game is ultimately going to be the difference in that game. I take Michigan.
The Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan had the last dance. Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines, this is their last dance.
I like it, man.
Michigan wins, and I think they win in dominant fashion.
Oh, yes. You don't think this is a close game?
I think this is let's call it, I think they're going to pull away late.
Okay.
Right? So I'm thinking this game is going to be 28-17.
Wow. Okay.
28-17.
I'm going field goal. Right now, the spread has it, I believe, Michigan's favorite.
Listen, if it's a field goal, I think Michigan's going to
4.
lose. Let me say that. Because that special team didn't really impress me. So Michigan got to win by a touchdown.
Maybe they got the
better.
kinks out of their system. We'll see. Yeah, that one kick was rough. That one kick was rough.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think we took it for granted because the Bama kicker just knocks in a 50-yarder like it was nothing
he's killing
from the hash. So that was obviously a talented kick. He's going to be kicking in the league. But so now let's segue here to the NFL. And obviously we threw out a comment or a post on that Detroit-Dallas game because it was huge, and obviously it was even a greater impact when we see Philly throw up the big, L against the Arizona Cardinals.
You want to set the stage, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So a huge debate, right, regarding the 2-point conversion, right?
Brought up a bunch of other missed calls in the game too as well.
Yeah, so if you want to be technical, right, because I know you're the Cowboy hater and I keep it real.
I'm going to try to be as fair and objective.
I am a Giants fan, okay?
So am I.
This guy is just such a hater, I got to freaking defend the Cowboys,
Not
right?
a hater. It's called truth-telling. It's called truth-telling.
Let's see. Right, so everyone is talking about the missed call in that 2-point conversion. First of all, note this, right? The referees did make a missed call earlier against the
drive
Cowboys,
before, the tripping
right,
call.
where the Lions extended their foot out and the Cowboys got a penalty on them and they didn't get an opportunity to run out the clock, right? Let that record show.
Sure.
That's what led to all of this. Now, Lions come back, they score.
They also missed some holding calls on St. Brown getting held like he was
they
the
scored.
Cowboys D-backs, parent or
fast
something.
Forward, they scored, right? A touchdown.
Sure.
It is a 1-point game. It is a one-point game. Let's remember this.
The record
they could have
shows.
kicked a field goal. At any point, they had 3 chances to kick a field goal. 3 chances to kick a field goal. So the football gods spoke to them 3 different times, and they didn't listen. Let the record show, okay? Setting the stage. So now, they're running a play, and they score. It is a unbalanced lineup, okay? Where, if I'm not mistaken, they had 68 on the edge. It went number 68 offensive lineman. It went number 70 offensive lineman.
Correct.
68 and 58 were offensive linemen.
Yes.
On the other side, you had 70.
Yep.
Note, earlier in the game, number 70
Multiple times
to be the person that when they run their unbalanced lineup, he's the one that normally reports as eligible.
Correct.
You'd see him go like this, okay?
Yes.
Now, so before the play is run, okay,
we got video evidence. Yes.
Right, we got video evidence. The Lions were being slick. Let's make sure we recognize this. The Lions were being slick, okay? So
sounds like you're a Lions hater. I'm not a Cowboys hater.
Again, I'm keeping it real.
All right.
Okay. The offensive linemen have no reason to talk to the referees unless they're reporting eligible. Okay.
Which is what 68 was doing.
So 68 was reporting it as eligible. What in the world was 58 doing? 58 didn't belong there, right? So now 70 is also running to the referees, right? So now you have 58, 68, and 70 all going to the referee, trying to essentially
My understanding in the postgame was 58 just went, though, to help clarify that it wasn't. It was, in fact, 68. That's what I'm hearing in the postgame interviews.
Right.
But go on.
They were trying to be slick, right? Because, again, if one person goes to the referee, then it's obvious to see who the person
But it seemed like the slickness worked because they tricked the officials.
Listen, that's a different question. That's a different question.
I'm just saying.
So, ultimately, the ref runs over and says 70 is eligible. Now, if you talk to Jared Goff, he says 68 reported. Now, listen, the ref could have easily made a mistake. Right, you got 68, you got 58, and you had 70, and 70 constantly throughout the game was reporting as eligible, right? So I acknowledge that easily the referee could have and may have made a mistake. Now, did the ref make a mistake, or did the Lions' slickness confuse the referee, right? Let this show. Why do I say this? Because it is the player's job and responsibility to report themselves as an eligible receiver. So I got to go, hey, Mr. Ref, I am eligible, right? And then they go over to the defense and informs them or make an announcement. When I very first saw the play, my first instinct was, oh, they didn't report. Why? Because I did not hear the announcement 68 is eligible, right? Yeah. And so therefore—
it helps when you actually look at the person who's reporting to you, though, too, as well.
Again, that's the slickness. I'll give you your chance, right? So that's how the play happens. They score. Now, what the refs realized, because some people are saying, oh, they scored and they're trying to take it back. What the ref realized was one of three things, right? Because there was confusion on who reported, right? It's a illegal formation.
He didn't even realize it, too. It was a side official.
Right? Again, that's why they get together. Mm-hmm. Illegal formation, right? Illegal touching.
But the call was illegal touching, not illegal formation.
But three things were wrong. So illegal formation, illegal touching, and there's like one other technicality based on how the formation was set up, right? Sure. So like pick the call that you wanted, but based on the formation and what the ref was led to believe, right? It was an illegal play, right? Now, last two things I'll say. Fine. Let's say the refs made the mistake. All right. Next play, you go for the 2-point conversion from the 7-yard line.
Anything after, I totally agree with you.
That's a mistake, right? That's a mistake. But the football gods gave you a penalty on the Cowboys to bring it back
to the
4-yard line.
3.5.
So you can now kick the field goal, right? But instead, you go for it again.
That was a mistake. That was a mistake.
So, Mr. Shane, go ahead.
So listen, I love how you so eloquently tried to set all that up to make it seem like that it was completely on the Lions and the refs had like no fault in this situation at all. I mean, they called the wrong penalty, number one. Number two, I don't know. Did the rules change or something? Or can we now all of a sudden review a formation after a scoring play is called and retroactively call a penalty? What world are we living in? Because if we can now review plays for penalties, oh, well, excuse me, Mr. Officials, I think we should go back through every single game this year and maybe look at how many flags or penalties you missed. Listen, I don't want to go, because we went a lot into this on the comment section too as well, and I've been commenting back and forth with it as well. And this isn't even a Dallas thing, because here's what I'll say about Dallas. Dallas has definitely been on the bad end of some questionable calls, especially that first game against Philly. Look, two teams I hate, so now it's easier for me. But when I look at that game, I don't think you should punish Dallas, okay? Dallas didn't do anything wrong. But at the same token, Detroit, Campbell went through this with the officials pregame. Anytime you are going through trick plays, formations, okay, new alignments, you have to kind of bring it to the officials to show them, hey, this is kind of what we're planning on doing when the time comes. They had to go through it with the fake punt too as well. They had to introduce and show them that same play. So my issue with it at large is just, if they told you this, I get it, it's late in the game. You got to be looking at the guy who's coming up into you talking. 68 is standing right there. You can see at least his head and mouth moving in some regard, and I don't think he was doing it just to ask the official how his holidays were and wishing him a happy new year.
He's staring at 70 running. Why is 70
70's behind him, though.
Yeah, but no. But if you look at the ref's face, he's staring at 70 as he's running towards the ref. Why is he running to the ref? What the hell is 58 doing? Right?
Listen,
58, get back in the huddle. Stop being slick. Right, you did too much. I 100% agree with you that Dan Campbell went earlier, told them what they were going to do. So, like, yes, to that piece of it, I have a problem. But a high leverage moment, my thing is 68 should have made sure, hey, I am eligible. Right, I am eligible.
I believe the rule actually says, though, you actually are literally supposed to say report.
Come on, let's
no,
not get
I'm just saying.
Whatever.
That's what everyone is saying.
He's reporting that I'm eligible.
Yeah,
but my whole point is that,
which I never knew. I never knew the rule was you have to walk up to them and say reporting.
Oh, 100%.
I never knew that.
So that they can go tell the defense or make the announcement. So my whole thing is they were just trying to be a little bit too slick, right? It's a high leverage moment, right? The defense was already on their heels, right? Sure. You had the opportunity. Everything was in your hands. There was no need to have 3 linemen around the referees. Again, to your point, the referees been making mistakes all year long. Why confuse them even more?
That's the best argument you've made.
So you tried to trick the defense and you tricked the ref.
That's the best argument you've made. If anything, you got too slick. You even tripped up the referees, and they retroactively decided on the fly, all right, we're just going to decide this game and review
Football
it.
gods trying to give it back to you, but instead you don't listen. Kick the field goal.
All I'm going to say to the Dallas people out there is I wouldn't be, getting crazy about that win. But listen, that is all the time we have for segment number 1. Got a little bit fiery there. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back for segment number 2 when we run it back. What is up, everybody? Welcome back for segment number 2 of Run It Back. I am your host, Shane Mallard, joined with my co-host, Mr. DaCosta, and got a little fiery at the end of that last segment, talking a little bit about that Dallas-Detroit thing. Yeah, you keep it something, I'll say that much. But anyway, the game that we missed. You ever play the video game back in the day? It used to be called Rampage.
Okay, yeah.
So you can play with like Godzilla and King Kong. You just basically ran around trampling cities. Well, I heard there's a sequel to that game. It's called Ravens Rampage. Oh, no, wait a second. That's just the game that we actually watched on Sunday. Good Lord. That was a beat down. And let's just call a spade here. I mean, the Ravens right now have to be the overwhelming favorite to go and win the Super Bowl. They are just tough, man. And I think probably the most shocking / disappointing point was seeing Miami win that game against Dallas. I was like, you know what? That was like a character win for them. Like, it was physical, it was grind out, it was against another tough team. I didn't care if they lost to Baltimore. I just wanted to see them go and prove, hey, we could go and compete on the road. Like, we're a team that you need to take seriously in the playoffs. I got to tell you, after watching that game, they're just a team now that I wouldn't be shocked if they were one and done in the playoffs. But what's your thoughts?
Listen, I got to give it to coaching, man. Now, technically, Miami Dolphins beat the Ravens last year, right, with a huge comeback, in the fourth quarter. So during
it's not what happened this year.
It's not. But listen to this, right? In Alabama-Michigan game, we talked about like elite coaching, adjustments, and things like that, right? The Ravens defensive coordinator, right, basically took the scheme from the 49ers game, replicated it to the Miami game, where Coach McDaniels came from, and ran an extremely similar scheme with the depth with those linebackers to cut off those throws. If you look at one of the interceptions that Roquan Smith got, he was so back in coverage.
That interception was amazing.
Right?
It was amazing.
But now here's the thing. That's not standard depth for a linebacker.
No, I know.
So
the range too. Like, he had depth, but he was just like,
and the Bears gave him up.
Camera, and then all of a sudden, bang.
And the Bears gave him up, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm sure they wish they still had him. But no, so again, I think the defensive coordinator is McDonald or something like that.
Okay.
But he's doing a phenomenal job. And to your point, I think if the Ravens are going to make the Super Bowl, right, it's going to be because of that defensive coordinator and how he can make adjustments.
Just how they played all year.
And prepare a defensive scheme, right, to really neutralize each opponent.
Yeah.
So then when you throw it to Lamar, right, and say, hey, go do your thing, we got your back.
Yeah.
And we're going to get you turnovers.
Sure.
Now he can literally blow teams out, right? Simply because you give them 1 or 2 extra possessions, they're not going to look back now with those receiving weapons.
Yep.
You got Gus Edwards. He's just a touchdown machine in the red zone. So I think they're extremely well coached, right? You see the in-game preparation. You see the in-game adjustments.
100%.
And I think now that it's got to go through Baltimore, right? Literally, they're going to be a tough out because they play so damn well at home.
They do.
And guess what? They've beaten the Dolphins.
And they're going to have a week of rest. They're going to be physically, rare. They're going to be ready to go. Maybe the offense, in terms of, some momentum. That's the only thing I worry about with them, because they were the 1 seed a couple of years ago, and they sat all their starters that final week, so they didn't play for 2 weeks. What happens? They come out, and they kind of lay an egg. The offense was a little out of rhythm. So it will be interesting to see how they proceed with this final game this year. But this Baltimore team just feels different.
Yeah.
They feel like a team that's really on a mission.
You got OBJ, right? He's got a Super Bowl. He's got experience, right? So I think
making timely plays for them, too.
100%.
And Zay Flowers is, boy's a dog.
Yeah,
he's a
really
dog.
good.
I like him a lot.
Really good. And that's the difference, right? You got extreme young talent in Zay Flowers. You got veteran experience in OBJ, right?
Isaiah likely filling in really nicely for Andrews. That dude is an athlete.
Very nicely, right? If I'm not mistaken, Nelson Aguilar is on that team,
yes,
right?
Yes,
as well,
yes, yep.
right? So he's got good veteran experience,
sure.
You know, in some playoff caliber games. And
100%.
then you have, you know, Bateman. Bateman could just show up and make a play without the pressure of having to win the game.
100%.
So I really like their setup right now. And their offensive coordinator, Monken, kept the old offensive scheme on the run side, but implemented all of these new stuff in the passing game. And listen, don't be surprised if Lamar Jackson during the playoffs runs for 100 yards.
Oh, I see him running a lot more come playoff time.
He could taste the Super Bowl right now.
Yeah.
All right, it's going through Baltimore. You just got to win 2 games to make it to the Super Bowl, right? He
owns the NFC.
Owns the NFC, and he wants to prove to the entire league. If you're telling me you're the Atlanta Falcons, you don't wish you had him right now. If you're the New England Patriots, you don't wish you had him right now.
How did nobody? So this is interesting because remember the whole contract dispute and everything, and nobody else was calling him. How did nobody make a call?
Listen, the Carolina Panthers traded 2 first-round picks, 2 seconds, and a third-round pick, DJ Moore, for Bryce Young.
Yeah.
You could have gotten Lamar Jackson for only 2 first-round picks. You could have still had DJ Moore, and you probably would have won that division with that defense.
Sure.
Right? The Atlanta Falcons, you put Lamar Jackson on that team, forget about it, and you only had to pay him $250 million.
Yeah.
Right? I think the narrative that was put out there by the Baltimore organization, like, oh, no, he only wants a $250 million guarantee. Let's show these players, right, what we're about, and we're going to stand together. We're not giving anybody another, guaranteed contract, where the other team screwed themselves because you could have gotten the projected MVP of this season for only $50 million a year. And instead, he's about to win MVP, and he is going to be 2 games away from taking the Ravens to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to count the chickens before they hatch. They still have to go there, and they have to do it. But if Lamar goes and completes this season and they go and win the Super Bowl, the discussion has to be had of, is he the best quarterback in the league? I mean, it's really, to me, it's between him and Patrick Mahomes. I think you and I have been on the same page on this, because if you go all the way back to the beginning when we first started this, and we were ranking top 5 quarterbacks, we both had Lamar in our top 5s. Do you know how many people came back at me and were just like, you have Lamar in your top 5? And they're like, why? And I'm like, because I actually watched the games. When you watch Lamar, when you look up a stat sheet or a column, sometimes you'll look at Lamar's numbers, and they weren't the prettiest, all right? He only threw for 150 yards. He had like 1 touchdown, or maybe it was 200 yards, 1 interception, but he ran the ball really well. But when you watch Lamar, like, other players are enamored with Lamar. The players around the league love Lamar.
He's a great, I mean, from all indications, and I got some, friends that are close to the team.
Sure.
Like, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's an absolutely great guy.
And he's about that work. He's about winning. That's what he wants to do. And I think that the Baltimore Ravens, too, feed off of the fact that he's not afraid to take a hit. He's going to get in there and plug along just like the rest of them. And I think they bring that added element of physicality because of the way Lamar Jackson plays football. When they see a quarterback sticking his nose in there and not afraid to get in there and get physical and get after it as well, that does something to a team.
Listen, hands down, I'll say this now. If Lamar Jackson wins the Super Bowl and the MVP of the league and the Super Bowl,
sweep right there.
He will be the second best quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes.
Fair.
Right? If you look at Bill
Still
Parcells.
got to give Mahomes the respect.
If you look at Bill Parcells, he says, you are what your record says you are.
Sure.
Lamar Jackson has the second best winning percentage behind only Patrick Mahomes since he's been in the league. And overall throughout the NFL. All right, it's Patrick Mahomes, then it's Lamar Jackson. Brock Purdy's creeping up there.
Yep.
He doesn't have enough games underneath his belt yet.
Yep.
But Lamar Jackson has the second best winning percentage. He adds a Super Bowl and 2 MVPs, of which 1 MVP was a unanimous MVP. Hands down, he will be the second best quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I just don't want to hear any of the down talk on him anymore. He can't throw, he can't this. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. And if you're still saying any of these things, you're simply just not watching him play football. Because when he goes out there and he plays football and you actually watch a full game, you're like, oh, that's the best athlete on the field. Nobody has a plan or any way to stop him.
I think that's the point right there, right? They only look at him as an athlete, not a quarterback, right? And that's the problem.
That's making game-winning plays.
I'm not going to name any names, but there's some quarterbacks out there that people are just enamored with, just love them so much, but they can't win the big game.
I know who you're talking about.
They can't win the big game. I'm not I'm not gonna
I
call out
gotcha.
any mafias
I gotcha.
or anything like
I
that.
gotcha. I gotcha.
I'm just saying, right? Lamar Jackson, at the end of the day, if he goes out, all he does is win. So if he goes out and wins a Super Bowl, 2 MVPs and the Super Bowl MVP, hands down, there is no one else but Patrick Mahomes, right?
That you could say is definitively better.
Exactly.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And listen, that was just a straight up demolition derby. I can't wait to see the Ravens come playoff time. It'll be interesting to see what they do week 17. I doubt that they play their starters the entire game, but we'll wait and see. I think they're looking for the rest portion. They're a little banged up too as well. Miami really hurt themselves too, because you talked about coaching. They lose Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb inside of the same game, 2 of their best defensive players.
3 minutes left.
What are you doing with those
Down
guys?
20
Shawnee
plus
in
points.
production brought this up when we were meeting beforehand, and he said, why would you have those guys win 3 minutes when you're just getting shellacked? Take them out and live to fight another day. So that's one that the Dolphins might pay for next week as well.
I know I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's coaching, right? That's a coaching mistake, right?
Some point situationally, just be smart.
3 minutes left in the game, you lose your best pass rusher.
Yep.
Like, you know, that's coaching. You got to get him out of there.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What's going on in Philly, man?
Ooh.
What is going on in Philly?
You really want to know?
To me, coaching 100%.
Amen.
That is coaching.
I know
That
I
is
sound
coaching.
like a broken record, but you
That's
know
what
it
this game is about. I was saying it over the week, over the holidays.
I
to
will
somebody.
say in football more than ever, right?
Coaching matters.
Extremely matters.
100% agree.
The Philadelphia Eagles lost Shane Steichen.
And you can
right?
see it.
You
can
could
see
the difference, right?
They've lost their identity
right? The
on
run
offense.
pass options just aren't there.
Yeah.
You look at the Colts, right? One
They
game
never
away
stick
from the
with
playoffs.
anything.
They're 20% of their offense is run pass options.
Yeah.
20% leading the league.
The Colts
by
you're
a
talking about.
The Colts by
with
a
Steichen.
wide margin, right? Where's the run game in Philly? Right? Why did you go out and trade for Swift if you're not going to pound the rock?
You let go of Miles Sanders, who ended up getting you to the Super Bowl last year, and a running back by committee, to get what you call as a better running back to run him less.
Where is A.J. Brown? You're telling me you can't call a play for A.J. Brown?
APB.
Right? Now, I'm not mad at A.J. Brown. Where are the offensive plays? So now so again, coaching, number 1. Number 2, I got to put it on Jalen Hurts. Earlier in the season, I thought Jalen was trying to get everyone involved, right? I don't think Devontae Smith gets enough love. But too much love was going to A.J. Brown when he had, 6, 7 straight games, 125 yards a game, 1 to 2 touchdowns a game, right? To me, there should have been some more even distribution. But now he's absent, right? Like, you're not even throwing him the ball at all. Right? So that I have a problem with. Yes, I think Jalen needs to incorporate his legs more, but that's after your run game. That's after you get A.J. Brown involved, right? There are plays, and then there are playmakers. A.J. Brown is a playmaker. Give that man the ball, right? And maybe you could start to make a difference. So, again, also, there's no motion in their offense, right? It's very vanilla. You're keeping every guy in place. There's not a lot of shifts. So, that also concerns me. Yes, I know it's a first-year offensive coordinator, but he was on the staff last year. The head coach Sirianni, he's trying to say this is his offense. But at the end of the day, the sequence
I wouldn't be running around saying
the
bragging that that's your
sequence
offense.
of play calling is just not there, right? Defensively, they're a mess. I don't think changing to defensive coordinators actually helped them because that defensive line hasn't looked better, right? That secondary
Past
banged
the
up.
defensive line, there's just nothing good on the defense.
Now, we talked about this earlier. Their secondary defensive coordinator on the Philadelphia Eagles left and went to the Baltimore Ravens. Look how well that secondary is playing, and look how poorly the Eagles secondary is playing.
Sure.
He wanted that defensive coordinator job. They passed him up, and now that defense is in shambles.
Yeah.
Right? So when we talk about coaching, right, it's not only the head coach, it's not only the offensive coordinator, it's not only the defensive coordinator, but those position coaches matter, right? And that secondary has not been the same.
Those are the guys that are
since he
working
left.
with those guys each and every day, too. Like,
Yes.
the D coordinator and offense coordinators are almost like the head coach for their respective side of the ball.
100%.
So they're more or less overseeing the whole operation. But to your point, position coaches are the ones that players build like those true relationships and bonds with. Those are the guys that are communicating with them day in, day out about their scheme, their design, and what their drills are.
Darius Slay was advocating for this dude to get the defensive coordinator job because he was telling them how well he coached them up and how smart he was from a football standpoint. Right. So those are the type of things that I'm saying, right? They lost more talent on that team than they realized. And it's not because they all got recruited away. There are some people that they didn't realize how good they are left. And now that team is in shambles. Right. So I think they're going to have a major overhaul again and bring in some veteran coaching experience across the board. Right. To really be able to coach up these players. And guess what? Philly's got to get younger.
Yeah.
They got to get younger, right?
Sure.
Like you had
At
a great
certain
run.
spots, absolutely.
You got to run it back.
On the offensive line, they're going to have to get younger.
Line, the secondary.
Kelsey very well might retire, too, this season.
Yeah, but guess what? He's still playing great.
No, he is.
He's still playing
awesome.
great.
He's awesome.
But
he was
hope
ready. He was close to retiring last season.
If they won it, it would have been a great way to go out. But you know what? Like, the offensive line isn't the problem, right? So let's see what happens.
Yeah, listen, I'll just look at Philly and I'll say this about them. They're definitely hitting a skid at the wrong time of the year. The one thing I'll say about them, though, is if they get in, they're still a team I feel like that can be dangerous if they have time to figure it out. It's not like they don't have talent. But I think the problem with them is they're going to have to win a lot of shootouts because right now it just doesn't look like their defense can really stop anybody.
But listen, you said it best. To go back to the boxing analogy, they've been winning all their games by decision. Right? And now all of a sudden they're getting knocked out.
Yeah, they are.
Right?
They are.
So
they can't throw a knockout punch. They were beating the Cardinals and they couldn't just put them away.
100%, right? And, you think about some of the games they won, right? If the Chiefs catch the ball, right, that's a loss on the Philly side.
Sure.
If the Bills, right, changed up their scheme and properly kicked the field goal, they could have, escaped with the win. So all of a sudden, they won by a lot of decisions, and now these other teams are getting caught up with them. Now, they had a brutal schedule. So, Philly, we recognize that you played the toughest schedule in the league.
They played really tough through that schedule, too. Like, they won almost all those games.
But you know what? Sometimes, I know this is going to sound crazy. Sometimes winning isn't everything, right? How you win matters.
Sure.
And so
they kept getting by the skin of their teeth.
Exactly. Even if you lose, but you look really good, but you just happen to lose at the last minute, that's one thing.
You might break through in a couple of weeks.
When you're scraping by, when you're not getting your playmakers the ball, when you don't have balance on offense, running or passing.
What was that phrase you used a couple weeks ago? Whatever is done in the darkness comes to the light. Was that you who came up with that phrase? Maybe. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. That was actually a head wrestling coach of mine. He was talking about some of the guys on our team.
I was like, is that biblical, right? Like,
if they're dogging it, right? Whatever's done in the darkness, meaning whatever you do when no one sees it.
Yeah, 100%. But guess what, right? I think that's happening on the coaching side. And now it's manifesting on the field, right? And guess what? There's a lot of tension here. A part of it too is that there is tension in the locker room. Last year, Philly was having fun, right? Having a ton of fun. They enjoyed playing with each other. Now there was the expectation to win. There was the expectation to get back. That pressure, right, all of a sudden changes things, right? And this might be their last run. Next year, this team is not going to look the same, and everyone knows it, and this year they're not closer to a Super Bowl than they were last year.
Yeah.
The 49ers look really good. Now, if you got to go through Dallas, in Dallas to win.
It's going to be tougher to beat them in Dallas than it would have been in Philly.
Those Lions aren't shabby. They're not shabby. If they can stop trying to, trick the referees and the opponents, they might just win the game. Should I not have gone there?
No,
Too soon?
It's fine. Soon? I thought it was funny. No, listen, like I said, Philly, they've earned my respect at least, being what they were last year and making it to the Super Bowl. They earned my respect to at least say, let me see them in the playoffs, because it's still not a team. I wouldn't want to play Philly in the playoffs, especially if they just all of a sudden kind of figure something out, because they have playmakers. They have the ability to go out and score on you. I just question if their defense can really stop any of the elite teams. And I would say right now, if I'm being really honest, I'd have them at best 4 in the NFC. I would have to have San Francisco at 1. Dallas is 2, if it's by default, if nothing else. Dallas and Detroit right now seem... To me, that's neck and neck. I feel like if those two teams
the
play,
way things are going,
that game can go either way.
Right now, I think the Lions are my number 2 team.
I like the way Detroit looked in that game. Even though they lost, the fact that they were on the road and you needed a bunch of shenanigans to go and lose that game, it shows them they can go into Dallas again and they can go win a game.
If they can avoid the Rams in the first round, I think the things really open up.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to see. But so here's a topic that you really wanted to get to and discuss as well, okay? Talking so much about the playoffs, how things are shaping up. We're in our first ever, fourth quarter report. It's the final report of the season, right? Yeah. So Denver and Russ. I have thoughts on the situation, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Listen, I'll try to be quick on this, right?
Sure.
So, like, obviously, you know, it's extremely important to be professional, right? And like we talked about, coaching matters, right? But at the end of the day, respect matters. And Russ, I get, really cares about his image, right? Has a beautiful wife, a beautiful family, and obviously he's trying to be the LeBron James of the NFL, right? So, and listen, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, legitimately, you know, beautiful family, great endorsements, right? Has made a lot of money. And so I understand that is not everyone's cup of tea, right? But the way he's being done in Denver, right, is a little distasteful, right? Because the highs and lows of the Denver Broncos season, right, is 100% been dictated by Sean Payton's decisions, right? And I get it. You inherited, to defend Sean Payton for a second, he inherited Russell
Wilson,
right? Yeah. That's not the guy he would have chosen. And based on his offensive scheme throughout the year, as well as Russ played, he's missed a significant amount of open receivers that his numbers could have been even better. Sure. Right? So I do.
Yeah, despite him having, like, I think it's like 28 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, he's like middle of the pack in QBR.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? So so I just think, right, to you go to him and tell him to essentially renegotiate his contract, right, and change guaranteed language out of his contract, right? You know you can't do that. And it's one thing to work with the player. First of all, like, you could have gotten rid of him at the deadline if you didn't want him, right? I get it. You would have, taken a big hit. You're going to take that hit now, right? Sure. But to me, if you want to get rid of a player after you've given him a $250 million contract, right? You know, $100 million guarantee, I think you have to work with the player to say, hey, look, it's not working out, right? Like, where do you want to go? Like, we want to get some compensation for you, right? And try to work out a deal with the player to put them in a strong position. Instead, you threaten them, right? He's got to go to the NFLPA, and then you bench him after you ask him to win. So you say, hey, change your contract or we're going to bench you. Then he goes out, and this is after he beats the Chief, and then goes on another run.
Yeah, I didn't realize this had been going on for this many weeks.
Exactly,
all the
right?
stuff. Yeah.
And so it's one thing if it was all at the last minute, they lost, now they're all out of it. This is happening. This is all coming to light, right? So think about it. Russ could have blown this up weeks ago, right? But he kept his mouth shut. He was being professional, but instead,
fair to Russ too for being that way about it.
Yeah, 100%, right? So, and listen, he got himself into shape, right? He looks better. I just think they could have handled it better, and I think they could have done it a little bit more tastefully, right? And ultimately, you know, like I said, I thought they should have pivoted earlier. I thought they should have traded off pieces, right, and start a rebuild. But instead, they made a hard push for the playoffs. You fell short, and now everything is blown up, right, when you could have, you know, unloaded everything and reset. But instead, you know, this is happening, and I think it just looks bad on Sean Payton again, right? Like, you know, you came in hard-nosed, my way or the highway. That was falling short. Now, all of a sudden, right, you know, midway through the season, you corrected it. You started winning, right? And now, because you didn't win all the way and make the playoffs, now everything's falling apart again, right? So, I think Sean Payton is an offensive genius, right? Has come in with
Did they trade Chubb last year or this year?
They traded Chubb last year.
Last year.
Right? Okay. So, but I think Denver's just a mess, and I get that they want to clean up that organization right now. Their approach in cleaning it up and the aftermath of what they've done with Russ, I think is a mistake.
So here's what I'll say to it all. I think that I look at this in a few different ways from the Russ side of things. I don't know Russ personally. It's not like I've ever met him. I couldn't speak to all this. I've never heard any reports necessarily that he was a bad guy, but you can definitely tell that the way he left in Seattle, some of those guys like Sherman and Marshawn Lynch do not seem to speak like particularly high of Russ right now.
Club Shay Shay, right, did an interview with Marshawn Lynch, and he talked about how basically Russ called him from a block number, right? So, you know, there's a lot of rumors out there that, you know, he's a little aloof, he's to himself, right? Like either you're in his circle,
if Tom Brady can give the 7th round draft pick, his phone number. Hey, text me anytime you need anything. Hey, Russ, you know what? Call your teammates from your own phone number.
The narrative is that Russ is not one of the guys,
Yes.
right? He's above the guys.
Heard that numerous
That
times.
is a narrative.
Heard that numerous times. Yeah, so I mean, again, the character sides of Russ is one thing, but you illustrated how, at least this year, he seemed to be handling things very professionally. Sean Payton, when I look at his side of things, I look at it from 2 vantage points. One, man, for what you say, right, bringing up all these things that had been going on for weeks, all these different things that he's going up to Russ and asking, what that's got to show you is, man, Sean Payton just really flat out doesn't like this guy. Now, whatever your personal feelings are from Russ aside, it's just like, what could have happened within those first 6 to 7 weeks where it was just like, no, we just like cannot be like amicable or have any type of relationship. What I'll say about Sean Payton on the other side is this team was a dumpster fire last year. What'd they win? 3 games, 4 games? It wasn't a lot last year, and they were a mess. And guess what? Russ was the quarterback of that team. He has to own that. He was a part of it. Bringing Sean Payton in now, right? You can see the team significantly improved, okay, and is at least playing closer to the level of capability based on their talent.
So, all right, let me say
and
this.
That's got to give. I was just going to say that's the credit that you got to have to give that credit to Payton.
So you just made me think of something different, right? Because again, you have to. All right, so I've been looking at this wrong, right? So Sean Payton, right, is a very experienced, NFL coach, 17, 20 years,
Sure,
right? So what would have brought Sean Payton out of his character to act like this?
Sure.
Is it possible that he recognizes that Russ might be a little two-faced, right? That his corporate image versus the football player that he is, right, to his coaching staff and his teammates rub Sean Payton so badly that he doesn't give a damn about Russ anymore. Because remember this, Sean Payton is the head coach. Sean Payton is the offensive coordinator. Sean Payton is the offensive designer of this scheme. So him and Russ are very intimate together.
I think he's going to get to pick his own GM now after this season, too, is my understanding.
Probably, right? So could it be that all that time spent with Russ, his inside view of Russ is so stark that he's like, I can't be around this guy, right? So, I don't know. I'm not saying Russ is two-faced. I'm just wondering, looking at it the other way, what would bring Sean Payton so far out of his professional coaching character this season?
And get so personal.
Exactly, because think about it, right? He threw Nathaniel Hackett underneath the bus, right? So there's a lot of
Which of that
things,
I did not agree with.
Right? So
that I didn't agree with.
Why would Sean Payton go so far out of his way, his character norm of being a head football coach, to do all of these things? Is it Russ? Is it, the multiple image versus the actual football player he is in the locker room? Is it that the entire situation was such a dumpster fire that it was more than he had to clean up and he's sort of over it? You brought up the GM and his shenanigans, right? In bringing in Russ and making these terrible deals. Was it Sean Payton's idea to keep everyone, or was it the GM's idea to try to have a winning record? I'm not sure, right? I think I have more questions than answer now. And all I know is Sean Payton's going to be there, and it's clear everybody else is going to be gone.
Yeah, so again, I'm not even trying to attribute blame and say who's right or wrong. I think both sides obviously have had their faults in the situation. The one thing I'll say with Russ, because Russ now does have to figure out, if they're going to cut him, what's next. Look at some of those games last year, about midway through the year, that I still remember this. That one D tackle got into it on the sidelines with multiple people, the coaching staff, and then went right at Russell Wilson. So I'm just looking at some of these common themes. You have Marshawn, who kind of tells this weird story about Russ. You have Sherman, who's never really been the most positive speaking about Russ either, too. Now, fast forward to everything that's happening in Denver. The D tackle and defense kind of going nuts on him last year. And then Sean Payton, this whole situation this year. For Russ, I think at some point, if he wants to continue playing in this league, you can be Mr. Corporate for so long. If you're not playing, you're not as relevant to all these business and sponsorships
Listen,
anymore.
the locker room is supposed to be your sanctuary, right? At the end of the day, like, all is accepted, right?
Sure.
All is accepted, right? So you
People
just gotta
from all
be,
different walks of life.
Yeah, you just got to be authentic, whoever you are, whatever you like.
And be a part of it. Be a part of it.
There is someone in the locker room for everyone, right? To be friends with, to hang out with, right? To go out with. So why is he so isolated? And is it that he thinks he's above everyone,
which is bad,
and looks down on everyone else? That's how everyone else will erupt and create a mutiny against you, because now it's you looking down on everyone else, right? You versus us. There's something deeper there. And like I said, I was looking at Sean Payton and his action, and not necessarily thinking about what could be causing him to react that way so much, because he is a football lifer. And so what is bringing him out of his character to act this way? And I guess all signs point to Russ.
Yeah, and again, I mean, the final wrap-up I'll do on that is just the numbers, right? The numbers say Russ is a Hall of Famer, yet now that's even being debated. It's being questioned. But that's all the time we have for segment 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the final segment, segment 3 of Run It Back. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined by my co-host, Ricky DaCosta, and this is segment 3 of episode 19 of Run It Back. Please, beautiful people, don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. We are looking for those 5 stars review. We're experiencing nice growth right now, but can always grow faster, man.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and let's get after it here. And listen, we're continuing with our 4th quarter report here. Starting off with our discussion, we have a few different awards and one little situation that we wanted to briefly discuss.
Okay.
But Coach of the Year, I think we could all safely kind of sit here and agree, 3 primary candidates. Dan Campbell, I think right now is probably the front runner, just because of them winning the first division title in 30 years, and everyone knows the Lions have had their struggles. I think a name that not enough people are probably going to throw out there is Kevin Stefanski for the Browns. I mean, they lose their starting quarterback. They lose their starting running back. They go through multiple quarterbacks throughout the season. You even mentioned, too, how they're on, 2 or 3 backup offensive linemen.
Oh, absolutely. 25% of their salary cap is on IR.
Yeah, so that's, 25%. That's pretty insane. And all they've done is have an 11-5 record and clinch the playoff berth a week before the final week. So, I mean, gotta throw it up to Stefanski. And then finally, you keep bringing this guy up, DeMeco Ryans with the Texans, right? So the Texans were one of the worst teams in the league last year.
2-15, if I'm not mistaken.
They were bad, obviously. They picked very high in the draft. Fast forward to this year, his first year as a coach. And if they win and Jacksonville loses, they win the division, and they're going to the playoffs too as well. Now, if Jacksonville wins and they win, they can still get in, but the Steelers would have to lose, I think, correct?
Yes, I think that's how it
because they would knock the Colts out by their...
the Colts and Texans play. The loser of that is eliminated. The Texans would get to 10 wins, right? And they own the tiebreaker over the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this. Who do you like for this award?
Listen, listen, based on the way it's shaping out, right, Dan Campbell is the obvious favorite, right? Did something special in Detroit. Just his attitude, his demeanor has really changed that franchise.
I'd play for that guy any day of the week,
is bright. Play for him. Run through a wall for that guy, right? Like,
you can tell his players love him.
He has your back, right? Listen, I hate to say this or bring this topic up, right? We just talked about the Russ and Sean Payton situation, right? Like, something like that's not going to happen with Dan Campbell, right? Because, right, he's going to pour into you, right? He's going to further encourage you to be who you are, right? I mean, think about it. Jared Goff was thrown away. He goes to Detroit with Dan Campbell, and now he's on the verge of getting a massive contract,
Goff,
right?
Too, man.
Really
that's worked out
because
for
he was thrown away.
I know.
And, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right?
Basically, like the reason they felt like that they didn't win that Super Bowl when he was there.
Exactly. So now, right, that's everyone's pick. But listen, to me, I have to look at where you were, where you started, to where you are now.
Fair.
And DeMeco Ryans, with the number 2 overall pick, you draft C.J. Stroud, right? Thinking that's your leftover, right? Everybody, quote unquote, wanted Bryce Young, right? C.J. Stroud just comes out. You developed him. He's going to win Rookie of the Year. We're going to talk about that. But then here is a key critical move, right? And I thought it was foolish. I won't lie. I'll keep it real. The Texans traded for the 3rd overall pick, gave up their 2024 first-round pick and a second-round pick to draft Will Anderson. I thought Will Anderson is a hell of a player. I just thought that was too heavy of a price to pay in a rebuilding team, but they knew something we didn't, and now they're on the verge of winning their division. And if they go out and win their division, that's a massive, successful trade that they made. I think those move after the Tank Dell injury to still win that division. I think you got to give it to D'Amico Ryan from where they were to where they are. The Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions, I think they were 8-9 last year or 9-8, just missed the playoffs. So they were on the verge. Everyone expected them to win the division. So they did what we thought they were going to do.
Sure.
The Texans literally blew everything out of the water. So I think hands down, D'Amico Ryan is the candidate.
Listen, I think you make a great argument, and I'm sure it's a lot of. I don't think it's a name that I've been hearing a lot of other people bring up, and I think you make a great case. I still lean towards Dan Campbell because you pointed out about where they started. Now, were they a 2-win team the year before? No, they weren't. But they still were not a playoff team. And the Lions seem to almost kind of be like the darlings of the NFL this year. Like everyone's kind of just been behind them and rooting for them because it's been hard 30 years for the Lions. It's just been tough. Throw behind that the fact of a story like with Jared Goff too, where he's the castaway, he's the throwaway, he's left for dead. You send players to Detroit to basically die. Matt Stafford got to get out of there because people were like, now people are finally going to realize how good he is. Well, Jared Goff has done really well for them too as well. A rebirth to his career. I just feel like all the momentum and all the signs and the fact that they've already clinched the division after not making the playoffs last year, I think Campbell probably gets
Listen, I get it, right? You just want to pick the prettiest girl at the dance, right? She's the most popular girl.
Who doesn't
want
to?
You want to pick the prettiest girl in the dance.
Yeah.
I
got lucky. I picked the most prettiest girl.
Right? Well, listen, I want to pick
Shout
the
out,
girl,
wife. Love
right?
you.
I want to pick the girl, right, that's going to blossom and continue to be pretty throughout the years, right?
What an analogy.
So she might not be the prettiest girl today, but 25, 35 after a couple kids,
playing the long
right?
game.
She just might be a MILF, right?
Oh,
that
my
is
goodness.
the girl that I want.
You're going to get us kicked off, man.
I didn't use any bad words.
You're too
right?
funny,
FCC
man.
airwaves.
You're too funny. But listen, I think both have a very strong case. And I think Stefanski has a case too as well. I think that coming into the season, probably one of the things that will hurt him is collectively that team looked probably more talented top to bottom than the other two. But the coaching job he's done since all the injuries that happened can't be ignored. But I think it's between Campbell and Ryan.
Yeah, and listen, if I agree. The Browns coach Stefanski is a solid pick, but I rather, if there's a coach I'm going to give it to on that staff, I want to give it to that defensive coordinator that really changed that team around. I think that was a hell of a hire, and that's the man that really deserved the credit.
Well, I'm envious of him too, just because he gets to coach.
Right,
my
Jim
man.
Schwartz, right? If I'm not mistaken,
Jim Schwartz. He's been all over the league too. He's in Detroit. He was in Philly, and I'm jealous of him because he gets to coach my man crush in Myles Garrett. So I mean, Myles Garrett's a dog.
Can't argue that.
So listen, Bears situation. We wanted to quickly touch on this, right? A few different scenarios for them now, and they're
talking about draft picks, Texans,
what do you
and
do?
whatnot.
They're playing a lot better too to smooth out this end of the season. Now, you and I are kind of
you want to keep Fields, right?
I think that if I'm the Bears, I think you could get Hall for trading that first overall pick. I think Fields has shown you like the potential to be a very good quarterback in the league. Now, the consistency, like we always say, now I know what you're going to say. You're going to bring up the resetting the salary. And I do think that's a great point. But you set him up now with the big time salary, right? You get to draft a bunch of young players that you're not going to have to trade that aren't quarterbacks. You're not going to have to pay them for a minimum of, let's say, 4 to 5 years, depending on how long you keep some of them, because you're going to get multiple picks back on that too as well.
Listen,
so you can put a lot of those nice young pieces around him too as well.
Like I said, you just want to take the prettiest girl at the dance, right?
Here
but
we
you
go
know
with
what?
This blossom,
I want to
and
invest.
There's a flower and water in the garden.
I want to invest a little bit, right? Right. And guess what? I dated Fields, right? I dated that girl. I'm going to move on because it's not really going anywhere.
He's older, though, so this
right?
kind of works away from the MILF analogy.
Hey, listen, we didn't get to that point yet, right? We didn't get to that point. So you know what? I got to reset, right? Get myself a new girl at the dance, right, that I could really see a better long-term future with, right? And guess what? Right now, that's looking like Caleb Williams,
Okay.
right? And guess what? Listen, you're married, right? To get
I am
divorced is
married.
expensive. Right? I can tell you that. They take half. So therefore, before I'm going to put a ring on it, let me make sure it's going to last. Right? So I'm going to ship Fields away, get something back for him, and restart with Caleb Williams. And I just might go out and get Jim Harbaugh to be his head coach.
Well, you just triggered my singing vibe right there because now I'm just tickled with wanting to sing. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. It's not Taylor Swift,
I don't think
song.
anybody's putting a ring on Fields, right? Now, listen, let me say this. I think Fields is a hell of a player.
I
right?
think he can play.
Yes,
That's my only point.
Let me make sure, no disrespect, right? I just think Fields is done in Chicago, right? If I'm Fields, I want to go to the Atlanta Falcons,
go to Atlanta.
right, and kill it, right? So if I'm Fields, that's where I want to go.
I think Fields is a player, though, that's very coaching and scheme dependent. Like, you need to...
You need to build an offense
Yes,
around him,
correct,
100%,
correct,
right? So
correct.
I would love to see him, on the Falcons. I hate for him to come to, my division, but I think he would actually do well in Washington, right? I think there's a lot of places that he could go.
Just give him a good OC, and I think he's got a good chance.
Agreed. Imagine if he had Shane Steichen.
Yeah. No,
Right?
that would be
Right?
nice, too, as well.
There you
Because
go.
look at how he was using... I forgot his name. The rookie,
Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson, the way that guy was looking at the beginning of the year. So running quarterbacks are those quarterbacks that have they're kind of a run first. That's their primary talent. You have to develop the throwing side of thing. You see how crucial it is for him to have good OCs.
Oh, 100%, right? Because it's that development, right? You look at Jalen Hurts, right? The progress
Give
that
him
he
time,
made
yep.
year over year. Now, I also want to say this. I do think Jalen Hurts might be a little bit injured, right? Having some nagging
They're saying
injuries.
middle of the season he was banged up.
Exactly,
so, yeah.
right? So I do want to say that. But Fields, if he gets that type of coaching, I think he could take that next step, right?
I'm with you.
He's like, what if he was on the Cleveland Browns? Right? That's the type of franchise that, can believe in him, change things around. The other team that I wouldn't mind, even though Baker's killing it, I'd be interested to see him with the Bucs,
in Tampa. Yeah.
right? With a big time player like Mike Evans,
Yep.
a reliable hands like a Godwin.
Yeah.
Goddard, not Goddard. The tight end, Otter, right?
Oh,
Otter,
yeah,
right?
Otter.
Something, right?
Otten. Cade
something like
Otten.
that,
Cade
right?
Otten,
Yeah, there you
Yep.
go, right? A solid, reliable tight end.
Sure.
With a great defense. I think that's the recipe,
Yeah.
right? So those are some of the places
But
I
I
like to see him
actually
in.
liked your Atlanta play, though, just because timeline-wise, those guys all kind of
They're
fit
all young,
well
yeah.
together. So, again, it would be if he went to Atlanta, it'd be very similar to, kind of what I'm saying, advocating Chicago could try to do.
Mm-hmm.
But Atlanta already has, they've got Bijan, they've got Drake London, they've got Kyle Pitts. They've got a bunch of different playmakers on that team. You just put a quarterback in now that has that added talent and element. That
You
could
know
be a
who just
very
came to
exciting
mind?
offense.
What about the Tennessee Titans? That might be a really nice place, right?
It's not,
with
yeah.
D-Hop, strong running game, with a great
But I
defense.
think they're going to wait to see and evaluate Will Levis a little bit more.
No, that's
'cause he's
fair.
shown them a
But
little something.
if there was
But
no
I hear
Will
ya.
Levis,
Yeah.
right, Justin Fields
Yeah.
would fit well there.
Yeah, I like the Atlanta pick. So before we go into our final pick segment and our final stud of the week for this year, all right, don't worry. Obviously, we're still going to be having the show come playoff time, but we got to talk awards now. I think we can just shut the award down on one, right? MVP, Lamar. We can just move past. Okay, we're both in agreement there. It's Lamar. And he just slammed the door shut on that with this last week's performance. Okay, so offensive player of the year.
Tyreek Hill.
I'm with you.
Tyreek Hill.
I'm
Even
with
though,
you.
listen, I wish he got to those 2,000 yards, and then hands down, he's my MVP. Much respect to Lamar, but when you do something we've never seen before, right? That makes you extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And so
He could still. I think he's at 1,900 yards right now, or right in that vicinity.
No,
Less,
I think,
1,700.
yeah,
Okay,
so he
okay.
needs
all
250.
right. So he's
right?
not going to get
So-
to 2,000,
Yeah.
but I mean, he could have a monster game and still end up with 1,850, maybe 1,900.
Yeah.
We'll see what he does his final game. So we're in agreement there. Although shout out to Christian McCaffrey. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
He's obviously a guy that could have been deserving as well.
2021
Yeah.
rushing touchdowns,
Yep.
something like that.
And how about defensive player of the year?
So this one is really interesting, right? I think Myles Garrett was really leading the way.
Yep.
TJ Watt, was leading the way for a little while. I think it's going to be, to me, it's going to be an edge rusher. I'm trying to see who, I don't think any of them has extremely separated themselves.
Sure.
But I guess at this point, I know people aren't really talking about them or him, but if the Cowboys end up winning the number 2 seed, right, Deron Bland returning 5 interceptions for touchdowns, that might be a nice, pleasant surprise. But obviously, he hasn't been the best cornerback. But I think it's really up in the air. Who would you pick?
I would pick Myles Garrett, and the reason that I would pick Myles Garrett, aside from my man crush, obviously, is on a serious note, when you look at the Browns, and don't get me wrong, they're talented at all levels of their defense, but their defense is, I think, the reason why, 1, teams wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs. 2, they were able to achieve the level of record that they did. They beat the Ravens this year. They beat San Francisco this year. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong with both those games, I believe they held both of those teams to under 20 points in those games. I can't remember the final score of the Ravens game, but I know they beat San Fran 19-17 because they missed that final field goal. So the fact that their defense was able to keep some of these high-powered offenses so much in check with the injuries that they sustained on the offensive line, running back, their starting quarterback, their defense was kind of the identity that kept them alive.
Here's
and
my
kept them
only
so
issue
strong.
with that.
And he's the leader.
I think it's like 4 games in a row now. He hasn't had a sack, right? So that really dropped him out of the top 5, right? So that's my only issue.
I gotcha.
Right?
That could also just be an attention thing too, though.
Fair, right? But from a dominant standpoint, right? I agree with you. I just think, right, during this run, right, with the Browns, I think Flacco has been the guy, right? So.
And did you watch Garrett against the Jets on Thursday night? He might have not had a sack, but good Lord, he made Mekhi Becton look like a spinning wheel on a DJ table, man. That was rough.
So, yeah, listen, right? But listen, I think if he won, TJ Watt with 17 sacks might have something to say about that, right? So that, so that's the only thing, right? So, but I do, like I said, Deron Bland, 8 interceptions, 5 of them returned for touchdowns. You break a record, something we've never seen before. This might be a moment that he wins it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I could see any number of players. I don't think Bland will get it. I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. I think it's going to be an edge rusher, and I think it comes down to Watt, Brown, and then a guy who Brown. I said Myles Garrett. I meant, but another guy. Just throwing out there, my man Hendrickson from the Bengals.
They're not going to make the
tied with
playoffs.
Watt. That's the issue. It's not going to get him there. That's the only problem. And their defense didn't come on so much later in the season. But that boy can play. That dude can play. So defensive player of the year.
You know what that makes me think about, right? Like, there's over the internet right now, there's this whole, right, white team versus black team, right? On the NFL.
In white people
right?
versus
white
black?
players, right?
Oh,
white
okay.
NFL players versus black NFL players. Like,
don't make me comments on that.
Right? I'm just saying,
don't
right?
Make me
well, listen, first of all, I was gonna Hendricks a comment. That's a bad boy defensive end.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right? And TJ Watt, right? On the edge.
Sure.
Like if you go position for position, right? Like,
some things change a little bit.
Right? just say, hey, it's been floating around out there,
Yeah. Oh no, that would be my friend would love that debate, even though he would lose. Yeah. But I know a friend who would really like that debate. Rookie of the year.
Much respect to Puka Nacua, but it's got to go to CJ Stroud.
So, because I know how the NFL works, they're going to give the rookie of the year to a prominent quarterback. I get that. But it's hard to ignore what Puka Nacua has not only done, but is about to do. 27 yards shy of breaking the NFL single-season record for rookie receiving yards. 4th in the league overall in reception yards, too. I think he's top 10 in touchdowns, too, as well.
Up there in receptions, too.
Yeah, he's got to be top 3, or I think top 3 or 4 in receptions. If you look at above that, I'm pretty sure he's close to that. Puka Nacua has just been awesome, man. And if they didn't just give every prominent award to the good quarterbacks, I would say Puka. So my vote would be Puka Nacua, but I acknowledge that CJ Stroud is probably going to get it. And it's not like he doesn't deserve it.
I think if Puka had more touchdowns, he only has 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He
got started late in the year.
But again, to your point, 1,400 plus yards, 101 receptions, right? 8th overall in his first year.
This is a 5th round draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and you look at who
some of these scouts need to be doing their homework, man.
The Kansas City Chiefs, right? Like for one, and so
finally, comeback player of the year.
Listen, I think this is a great debate, right? What you got the safety from
Hamilton?
yeah,
Hamilton.
right?
Hamlin.
Right?
Hamlin, I
Right, Deron
apologize.
Hamlin, something like
Hamilton
that.
is from the Ravens.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you got him, you got Baker, you got Tua,
Sure.
and
You got Flacco. Wacko for Flacco.
You got Flacco out there, right? Listen, amongst all of those names, right? I like what Baker did, this year.
I think it's fair.
And so
despite this last week, he struggled a little bit. But
yeah, exactly, right? So I think some people would look at Baker, right? But I think, listen, Joe Flacco is a popular pick, right? Literally came off of his couch and took the Browns to the playoffs now. So who'd you go with?
I'd probably go with Baker simply because you kind of just pointed it out. People kind of thought he was dead. They didn't even think he was going to be a starting quarterback. They thought the Bucs were going to be in the running for that first overall pick. Yeah. So for Baker to get them in a position where if they win this game, they win the division, he showed that he can still be, an adequate, starter in the league.
And listen, talking about that, honorable mention to Tua, right? He's going to play all 17 games, right? 11
That's
wins
a good point
with his
too, as
team.
well.
So, listen, I think you give it to any of them, it'll be great. And look, when it comes to health and Deron and Hamlin, right? I think great to see him healthy and back.
Yeah. All right. So start of the week.
Start of the week,
and then we go rapid fire picks.
Start of the week, Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdowns, MVP of the league.
All right, write this down right now. It is Tuesday, January 2nd, 9:16, and Shane Mallory is picking one. CD Lamb with 13 receptions.
I told you he was a secret Cowboys fan.
Can you hear my voice cracking as I read this? I can't even get the words out. 13 receptions, 227 yards, and 1 touchdown. Listen. Y'all can call me a hater. I call it just truth telling, but I can't hate on CD Lamb. CD Lamb is awesome. Second in the league in receiving yards right now. I believe he's top 3 in touchdowns too as well. Dude's a baller, and he's without a doubt the best player in my opinion on that team.
Yeah.
So CD Lamb.
All right.
So listen.
Let's get to these picks, baby. It's not how you start. It's how you finish.
Mr. DeCosta won this past week at 12-4. I went 10-6. The career rankings now are 155 and 102. You are 152 and 104. So 3 games. So
okay.
Any man's
How about
game
you
right now.
You make your picks first, right? And then I follow up, no reneging. Deal?
No renegs, period.
All right, done.
No
deal.
renegs,
But you got to make all the picks first.
But no. And we always flip it back and forth.
No. It's the last. No, you go first, my brother. You're winning. Give me a chance to catch up.
We switch back and forth, though. We've done this every week.
No. We're going to mix it up for the end of the season. You go first, my brother. Are you scared? You got the lucky hat.
All right. Well, I'm bringing the hat out then if that's how we're going to do it.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. My comeback is real.
Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Little curious to hear about the starting thing on this, but I think that if anything, Baltimore plays the half. Pittsburgh needs this game to get in the playoffs, and they're going to get it. I like Pittsburgh.
You like Pittsburgh?
I do.
I agree with you.
Okay. All right. It's a tough game to pick here. Houston at Indianapolis. Indianapolis has been on a nice little roll, but C.J. Stroud is back. The Texans seem to pick up right where they left off. Nico Collins is back too as well. They fit right back into their nice little rhythm. I know Noah Brown's nursing a little bit of an injury. I'm going to take Houston in this game. I'm going to take Houston.
I agree with you.
Okay. How we go? Cleveland at Cincinnati. Now, I think you and I were both on this trend for a while. Love the way Cincinnati's played, okay, but I can tell you this. Joe Burrow struggles mightily against the Browns defense. I don't think it will be much different for Browning. Because it's in Cincinnati, I see it being as a little bit of a competitive game, but I like Cleveland to win this game.
I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals, right? I think Browning's going to surprise everyone. If Chase and Higgins is healthy, I think they're going to take this game.
Well, yeah, I don't know what's going on with Higgins. Yeah. And Chase has definitely been a little bit banged up these last couple of weeks. Minnesota at Detroit. I'm going to take the Lions. I think they want to win and go into that playoffs on fire.
I agree with you.
Jacksonville at Tennessee. I think this is a tough game, but I think if Jacksonville can go on the road and beat Carolina with C.J. Beathard, I think they find a way to win this game against Tennessee Titans. I think it's a tough game, but I think Jacksonville pulls it out.
You're
taking Tennessee.
I am going with Tennessee. I am going with Tennessee.
Already know.
Right? How sweet it would be to upset the division leader here.
Now we got the New York Jets at the New England Patriots. God, if there was ever a game I didn't want to pick, it is this one. I gotta say that just because, like, the New York Jets offense, the Jets almost look like they've kind of just mailed it in. Like that Cleveland Brown game, and as bad as the Patriots have been, they're at home. I like their defense to just upset the Jets enough. I'm going to take New England.
I agree.
It's easy for you. I do all the work. Okay. Atlanta at New Orleans. I think this is a low-key fire game right here. Potential division title on the line right here for these two teams if Tampa can't take care of business. I think it's going to be mute, though, because I actually think Tampa is going to win. Atlanta at New Orleans.
Where are you going?
I got to think about this one. New Orleans really surprised me this past week. Atlanta's been struggling, and New Orleans is good at home. I'm going to take New Orleans. Atlanta's a young team, and I just feel like, their end of the season hasn't ended quite the way they wanted. They did have a nice attempt at a comeback, although the Bears then just went and beat them up further. I'll take New Orleans in a close one.
All right, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons. In this one, I think...
you don't sound very confident. You do not sound very confident.
I think the pressure that New Orleans is going to face with is going to be too much for them. Derek Carr doesn't step up in these moments. I think the Atlanta defense is going to surprise them. They are going to be playing in a dome. I think this is tailor-made for Heineke, and so I think they come out and surprise everyone here.
Okay, all right. Tampa Bay, Carolina. I'm taking Tampa Bay.
I'm taking Tampa Bay as well.
Chicago at Green Bay. Man, this is another one. I feel like this is kind of a toss-up. Green Bay really lumped them up early in the season, and Green Bay is coming off a nice win, but Chicago is playing well. I'm going to take the Bears in a surprise matchup right here. I like the way Fields and that defense has been playing. Green Bay, while they have the better record overall, just too much back and forth play for me. I'm going to take the Bears.
Listen,
to play upset.
It's funny. I was going to take the Bears. I'm not taking them to disagree with you, but I think the Packers surprised me. And Jordan Love, the way he's slinging the rock. I think the Packers at home have a taste for the playoffs, and I think they're going to get in.
Okay.
Because Minnesota, chose to hang it up early and play a rookie quarterback.
Denver at Vegas. I'll say this. Stidham doesn't quite bring you like that upside that Russ might potentially have with just some of the bigger plays, but he runs the offense, and it seems to allow the defense to have more time because the drives run according to plan. They're a little bit longer. They won a nice 19-6 game against the Chargers. I'm going to take them in a close one against Vegas.
I'm going to take Vegas, right? We talked about continuity. We talked about enjoying playing together. Those players love playing for Antonio and Pierce right now, and I think they're going to want to go out on a winning note for him. I think if they win this game, he may have a winning record, and so I'm going to go with the Raiders here.
Okay. Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. Man, if there was ever a week to actually pick the Giants, this might be it, just looking at how Philly is playing. The only problem I have is I can't get the image of how the Giants lost that game to the Rams out of my head. I have to take Philly simply because I just feel like if Philly doesn't win this game, then they are nothing going into the playoffs. I'll take Philly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, listen, I'm struggling. I want to take the New York Giants. I think they're going to play tough, but I'm going to go with Philly as well.
Okay. Ooh, tough one right here. Seattle at Arizona. I mean, Arizona is tough. Seattle needs this game, though. I mean, they are desperate. They found a way to win last week. Man, I'm going to go with the Falcons, and I'm sorry. I'm going to go with the Cardinals for an upset. I'm taking the Cards.
Listen, the Seahawks need to win. I'm going to take the Seahawks.
I had to pick one of these home teams. Kansas City at the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm taking the Chiefs.
Who's the Chiefs' backup quarterback? Is Mahomes? I don't think Mahomes is playing, right?
I'll still take the Chiefs. I don't know if all their backups are playing, so.
All right, I'm going to go with the Chargers.
Los Angeles Rams at San Fran. I don't know if San Fran is going to play their starters for the entire game. The Rams don't need this game, but I think they probably want it just for the momentum factor.
Okay.
The fact that San Fran won't be playing all their starters, I'm going to take the Rams.
I will go with the 49ers. I believe in Sam Darnold as a backup quarterback, and they'll have enough talent to beat the Rams.
Dallas at Washington, I'm taking Dallas.
Agreed.
The
Save the
final
best for
game.
last. Save the best
Buffalo
for last.
at Miami. You know where I'm going. I picked them beginning of the season. I'm taking Buffalo.
Listen, I want to believe in the Dolphins. The Dolphins are at home. But the Bills have recently they haven't looked
Come
quite as
on,
good.
the Dolphins are your squad, bro.
I'm gonna ride with them. I'm going with the Dolphins. I'm
Alrighty.
going with the Dolphins.
All righty. Well, listen, one way or another, I mean, this is gonna decide it right here. And I love how I had to agree to the pick first and no renegs, but it's all good. So listen. That wraps up this week's episode of Run It Back. I am your host, Shane Mallard, joined by my co-host,
Ricky DaCosta.
and we will see you next week when we
Run it back.